What's up, guys? Welcome back to Muse Themes. My name is Ashton. Today we're looking at our new carousel slider widget for Muse. Now, we've always had a carousel slider in our Muse Themes library for several years, and it's always been a popular widget. However, this is Carousel Image Slider 2.0, and it's an entirely new build from the ground up and actually has very little to do with the old widget. It handles differing image sizes better than the old one, and has styling and functionality attributes that are more modern and just make the whole widget better to look at and to work with in general. But don't worry, the old widget will remain in our library in case you want to continue using it. The key difference between a carousel like this and just a regular image slider is that carousels generally show you more than just one slide at a time. You can typically see what image just passed and what image is approaching. Now, we have several examples of different layouts here on our live demo, all of which are achievable via the widget, plus much more. We've got a fixed width one here first that we can cycle through manually if we want, with a centered caption showing, and captions are linkable in the widget, followed by a full width one showing several at once. We even have different transitions to play with, as we can see from our third example, with clickable pagination dots as well. And lastly, we have this 2-image split screen view just to give some variety. Now, there are a ton of parameters included in the widget, allowing you to accomplish all of these ways and much more. So let's hop over to Muse and we'll take a closer look. I'm working with our live demo file, and I've just removed the widgets from the page so we can set it up from scratch. So as usual, let's open our library. We'll grab out our widget, and we'll drop it onto our page. Now, the widget container itself will represent the carousel's location, so make sure to size and place it accordingly. But we're going to get into sizing more in a little while. For now, I'm just going to keep it centered the way that it is here. Now let's take a look inside the panel. First option we have is Carousel Height. Now, it's important to note that even though the carousel height is adjustable here in the panel, the width is actually controlled by adjusting the widget container, so just keep that in mind. But height is adjustable here, and it's a very important setting when it comes to the desired dimension and aspect ratio of your slideshow images. There are actually several factors involved that determine the aspect ratio of your images. You have the width of the slider, the number of images displayed, and the viewport width of the user as well. All of these things will impact the aspect ratio of the individual images. So with that being said, I'm going to walk you through the setup in the order that we recommend that would allow you the most control over how the images are displayed. So before we adjust any parameters, let's just go ahead and load in some images. So I'm going to skip down to our Images tab, and we'll start loading in some images. And to do that, we'll just need to click Enable Carousel Image. We'll leave caption alone for now, but simply remove that text if you want no captions present. And then we'll click Add File. And I have 4 images here to use for our example, all with similar sizing. I'll select our first one and confirm. Great. And I'll just repeat the process for the other 3. And as I'm doing this, I'll just remind you that you do have the ability to apply links on captions as well. So simply check the box that says Enable Link on Caption and enter your URL in the field there. Very simple. Perfect. So the first step in customizing our sizing of the images is for us to determine how many images we want displayed at once. Logically, the more images shown at one time, the narrower said images will have to be in order to make room. So it's our second field here called Slides Per View. And I'm going to leave this at 3 for now since we've uploaded 4 images. That'll at least give us a valid scroll. So next we need to set the desired height and width of the widget, which will have a direct impact on the aspect ratio of the images, and here's why. You can see right now that we have the width of the widget set at 920 pixels wide. Well, we have 3 images set to show up at once, so the widget is automatically going to size those images to fit inside the space that you've allotted. So if you find that you want your images to display, say, wider, then you'd simply need to give the widget a wider setting or decrease the number of images shown at one time. So let me show you. Let's give this a browser preview as it stands right now. Okay, cool. It's actually looking pretty good already, but you can see how the widget has adjusted the aspect ratio to match the parameters that you've implemented. So if we wanted our images wider, then we'd need to decrease the number of images shown here in order to make room for wider images. Or we'd simply need to widen our playing field. So let's try that. Back in Muse, let's actually go ahead and make this whole thing full width. And just with that change, let's preview again. And just like that, you can see how we've adjusted our aspect ratio to a wider display. And you can even take it a step further. Let's say that you now like this full width view, but you still want the images to be square. Well, let's jump back to the settings panel. And to do this, we just need to add some height to the widget so that they can stretch downward to make this happen. So instead of 350, let's go 500. And we'll preview again. And there we go. We now have images that are much closer to square. So I hope that makes sense. You do have full control over the image's sizing and aspect ratio, but you do so by controlling the widget container's height, width, and number of images that it displays. So now that we've got the core down, let's look at all of our additional styling options. So back in the panel here, we also have a transition direction option here on the top. So if you want vertical transitions, you can adjust that right here. But let's expand the styling dropdown. Space between slides. This allows you to add some padding. So we're at 10 pixels now, but let's jump this up to 25 just to play around. And next we've got a bunch of toggle options. So let's start with Enable Centered Slide. Now this setting really only comes into play if you have an even number of slides set to display. So for this example, I'm actually going to lower that setting to 2. So with a setting of 2, by default, you're going to get 2 images side by side with the divider going right down the middle of the page. But if you toggle on this Enable Centered Slide option, it forces one image to always be in the center of the screen, forcing the outer ones to show partially on either side of it. This is how you get that classic carousel look. So let's toggle this one on so we can see how it looks in the browser. Next option is Hide Captions on Inactive Slides. Now this setting only matters if you've enabled the previous setting with a centered slide, but this would hide the captions on those outer slides that are only partially visible. It's likely that a lot of you will want these toggled off depending on how long the captions are, as they could potentially appear cut off and be distracting. So let's select this one as well. Loop mode is just as it sounds, allowing the images to continue to cycle even after you've passed the last one. And then autoplay, of course, allows them to cycle on their own. Enable Grab Cursor. This allows the user to transition the slides with their cursor instead of having to just click the arrow, kind of similar to how you would on a phone or a tablet. Hide Arrows, of course, does just that, in case you don't want the user to be able to control the slide. Enable Pagination. Now, if you turn this on, you'll get those pagination dots that show the user which slide they're currently viewing. And quick note on this one, keep an eye on your toggles here if you've opted to use vertical transitions. If you do use vertical transitions, the widget moves the pagination dots to the side rather than the bottom. Now the side is also where the arrows sit, so if you're using vertical transitions, it's best to use one or the other, not both arrows and pagination dots together, as they're going to appear overlapped. And lastly here, if you have pagination dots enabled, you can enable this as well, navigation via pagination dots. This allows the user to click to any of the specific images by clicking any of the dots themselves. And a couple last styling options here at your disposal. We have a few options for arrow color here if you have those enabled. Pagination dots color as well. You can adjust the captioning, font size, and color here. And finally, the transition duration, allowing you to adjust the speed at which the images change over. But with everything that we just changed, let's give this another preview. Okay, so as we can see, we have our more traditional carousel look going on here. Now remember, this was accomplished by selecting 2 images to display at once, not 3. Even though it may look like 3, what you're seeing is spacing allotted for 2. You have 1 full image here in the center and 2 half images on the sides. And this is what happens when you force that centered image with that toggle setting. And of course, we can scroll through these like normal, and everything is functioning beautifully. So you can see how much versatility and control you have over the appearance of the images given the height, width, quantity, and toggle options that are present in the panel. So I hope this was helpful and informative. Have fun with the widget, and as always, if you run into any snags, just drop us a line in support. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.